Good evening and welcome to the Verona Public Schools Board of Education meeting. We are calling the meeting to order at 7:07 and it is October 27th, 2022. If everybody will please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The reading of the meeting notice. This meeting is being conducted in compliance with the open meeting session that the Verona Board of Education passed a resolution at its annual reorganization meeting held on January 4th, 2022. The meeting set forth a schedule of its regular meetings, which resolution was within 7 days of passage. The schedule was sent to the Verona Cedar Grove Times, the Star Ledger, the Township of Verona, and the VEA. Postings of this meeting setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted at the Verona Board of Education office and on the Verona Public Schools District website. The Verona Board of Education operates under a consent agenda format. Any board member has the right to have an item pulled to be voted upon or discussed separately. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public and the press. Mr. Cruz, the roll call for attendance, please.
Sure. Mr. Walker,
Present.
Mr. Day. For the record, Mr. Day is absent. Mrs. Drappi,
Here.
Mrs. Prisco,
Here.
Mrs. Freshy.
Here.
We have quorum. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we are going to start off with Ms. DiGiuseppe and the superintendent's report.
This evening, we have a special guest with us. Mrs. Tanya Simmons is here, and Mrs. Simmons will be starting with us on or about November 21st or so as the Director of Special Services. I just want to give a little bit of an overview of Ms. Simmons' experience. She served the last 10 years as the Director of Special Services for the West Essex Regional School District. Her previous experience includes serving as a school psychologist for the Morris County Educational Services Commission and the Morris Hills High School in Rockaway, as a child study team case manager and school psychologist. She's also a school psychologist at Livingston High School. Ms. Simmons has recently just presented this month in Pittsburgh on the topic of school avoidance and emotionally fragile students. And this presentation was at a conference of the National Association of Pupil Service Administrators. She's also in the past presented at the Association of Middle Level Educators in Nashville, a topic on We Rise, a school-based program for emotionally fragile students. She holds a BA in psychology from North Carolina State University, a master's in psychology from Fairleigh Dickinson University, and a second master's in educational leadership from Montclair State University. Her extensive background in educational leadership, coupled with her enthusiasm and creativity, will be an asset to our students, and I'm sure she will create a multitude of educational opportunities that will lead to greater student success. So please join me in welcoming Mrs. Simmons to tonight for the district. So I have a video that I like to show. It's 6 minutes long, so I'm going to preface it by saying that, but I don't know whether you get the full breadth of what this opportunity is for us. So the year before the pandemic began, when I was in my prior district, I brought a group called CRG to meet with the board there and talk about mapping our schools. And what that means is they will provide a district map for security reasons. And it was going to cost anywhere between $3,000 to $4,000 per school, depending on whether they had multiple floors or not. So recently I was invited to attend a webinar by the Department of Student Safety and Planning. And the same group is now offering their services to school districts across the state, and the governor is paying for it. So I want to show you a bit about what they do. It's a very interesting group. They are a group of Army Special Services, retired Army Special Services. They use this technology in Afghanistan, Iraq, and different operations around the world. It will take a standard school map. And actually, what I didn't know is that depending on your architect, depending on how old your school map is, they're not all oriented north. So depending on who's reading it, they're coming into an area, you have first responders, they're not quite sure, they've never been in your building before potentially, and they don't even know how to orient your map. So the first thing they do is they take all of our existing maps and they orient them all north. And this will be every school district in the state. They also, they'll come in, once they orient our map, they come into our buildings and they completely digitally map and go into each room with a digital device. I'm not going to pretend I know what it is. And they make sure that everything that's actual in our buildings today or what's in that map, exits, doors, HVAC systems, gas valves, water shutoff, whatever could potentially be needed in an emergency situation is highlighted. And any first responders that appear on site for an emergency are actually GPSed right into the picture. So it's a live map. So I'm going to share my screen and show you a video that they put together for us to show boards of education. And they do high rise, they do stadiums, they do high rise buildings as well, but this is specific to boards of education. I'm not getting sound. It's there.
Right. Any information on the active shooter? Did anyone get any information?
The children are hiding.
Okay, and where? Okay, are you at the school, sir? Are you calling from the school?
No, I'm talking to the mother on the phone.
You're talking to a mother on the phone?
Yes, she's talking to her daughter right
Okay,
now.
where is her daughter hiding at? Like, what room is she
The
in?
1200 building.
I understand she's in the 1200 building. Does she know what room she's in?
She doesn't know. She's
Okay.
around 1220 to 1214.
Okay.
The way that an emergency call comes into a 911 dispatch, you have to keep in mind that the dispatchers are working under an immense amount of stress, and the first responders are as well. And so you have the translation of the event from the scene to the dispatcher, and then the dispatcher out to the first responders that are on their way to the location. We believe that first responders are all going to be familiar with every facility that is in their area of responsibility, but that's just not the case.
It's difficult to imagine the amount of stress of first responders under when they show up at a building and they see this kind of expanse of wall in front of them with multiple doors and potentially people fleeing the building, potentially with injuries, and they've got to come up with a plan in an unfamiliar site. When I say there's an incident at the art room at the high school, 98% of the first responders, dispatchers included, don't know where the art room is in the high school. So that adds seconds to minutes to the amount of time it takes for a first responder to potentially close with that incident.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
The problem tends to be that the fire department and the police department and the emergency services departments, they can't really talk to one another because they talk with a different vernacular. And so we want to simplify the communication technique, and that's what we've learned from the special operations community in the military.
Now, our whole company is based on adapting a technique used overseas, a gridded reference graphic, GRG. Now, this is a technique and tool that's been battle proven. It's been used thousands and thousands of times on every operation conducted by Special Operations. I've never gone out the door on a mission without a GRG in my pocket. And it's been used on every operation in the last 2 decades, to include the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound in Pakistan.
I've been shot at hundreds of times in my life, and I don't think there's ever been a time where I haven't had one of these GRGs or these maps in front of me. And you wouldn't leave and go on a mission without it. It'd be like leaving and going on an operation without body armor or a helmet. When bullets are flying or when people are wounded and there's a great deal of stress, it's something that's extremely simple to be able to communicate location. And that's not that much different than a domestic crisis response.
Coming back from overseas, we were shocked to learn that no one had ever heard of this technique, or no one was using it. No one had heard of a GRG, so we went and found a way to make these products just like the ones we used overseas. The United States is far different from Iraq and Afghanistan, so we had to make our products a little different, tailor it to people that are going to be using it. And so we changed them so much they're no longer a GRG, they're a CRG, a collaborative response graphic for local law enforcement and everyone to work together. We build these products with high-resolution aerial imagery, a grid overlay, accurate floor plans geo-registered, highlighted hallways, and this takes all the guesswork out of communicating, whether it's with teachers, with janitors, firemen, with policemen, EMS, with whomever else. Everyone can look at the same piece of paper and they can communicate in just a couple of seconds.
Police dispatch to available patrol. Respond to the high school on report of an active emergency. Units should arrive via door 2, grid square, C4 per CRG protocol.
Delta 22 en route.
If the intelligence coming out of a building via 911 calls is there's an incident happening in the art room or the media center, well, they know they can park their car in grid square C5, enter through door 2, take a left on the blue hallway and take a right on the purple hallway, and the art center's right there on their right.
The ability to have this interior knowledge of a building allows you to save time, which in turn will save lives. It doesn't matter if it's an airport or a stadium or a high-rise office building. The technique is basically the same, and that's what makes it brilliant, is in its simplicity. Critical Response Group is made up of 4 key pillars. The first are people that come out of the military special operations community that used our technique in real times of crisis. We also have people that come out of the law enforcement community that understand how to take that technique and apply it here domestically in order to help all first responders. We'll have people that are the brightest minds that are coming out of colleges and universities that introduce the technology expertise that allows us to really give a great product to our clients. And finally, we have business experts that work hand in hand with us to help us understand and apply sound business principles to make sure that we are scaling properly and being effective in our work. At the end of the day, it's a profound interest in people being safer. That's where we come from. Is the whole company is made up of people that have dedicated their lives to public service.
We didn't see it as a business opportunity. We saw it as a moral obligation to get this technique into first responders' hands.
Our mission is to enable first responders to make better decisions faster, with the ultimate goal of saving lives.
So the interesting thing is, to me, was that no matter what police, whether our Verona Police Department know our buildings, most of them know our buildings intricately. But if we ever had an emergency and Cedar Grove's coming here or West Orange is coming here, they will have access to everybody's maps. And just like you can use a map, C4, that's where you park. You go in C5, you go down the blue hallway, make a right in the purple hallway, art room's on your right. It's really specific so that every first responder has clear directions on how to find whatever's happening, whether it's someone who had a heart attack, whatever it is, to get into schools and or buildings in general. So this was an opportunity that I have already sent them our school maps. They have already started mapping. They will be setting up appointments to meet with our building principals to set up times to go through the buildings and capture all of that innuendo and clarify whether or not our school maps are as accurate, because we have done some renovations over the years. So, and Mr. Natural is getting some updated school maps from Atlas, from the company that did our facilities audit. So we'll be sending those as soon as they come in, but they can start with what we have because they're pretty good. We already have the aerial photographs, so that's all set. So this will be a quicker process. And I just want to, publicly thank the governor and the Department of Education for making this happen for schools, because it can be costly when you have 6 buildings and you have schools that have, like HB would be costly because they have 2.5 floors. Brookdale's got 2.5 floors, so it would be difficult. It would be more costly to do it if it were on our dime. But full disclosure, if we do anything, any kind of change, any kind of construction on the building, it would be up to us to update with the company going forward several years down the road. But those are minimal costs. Okay. Any questions about that?
Couple questions. Is the purpose of this presentation to inform the board that this is what you're doing, or are you actually looking for support or approval from the board for this project?
I would love to have support and approval from the board, but I already instituted it.
That's fine. That's that's a fine answer. You answered my question about the equipment upgrade costs. Another question, if it's found that our maps are golden, like they're perfect, would we be able to use this funding for other security measures, such as if we wanted to add more cameras or do hire more security personnel?
That's a good question. No, this is just for mapping, just to make sure that every school district in the state has the same access to security maps for first responders.
And there's no, in the installation time for whatever equipment we might need, that's not something that would disrupt the daily operation of the building?
Mm-mm.
Perfect.
Nope, we don't need any equipment. They come in and they map it, and then it's in their server.
That's what I was going to ask. It lives in their server,
It lives in there. It
but
lives in their
you
server.
have access to it. So if we did do construction and change something,
We just upload
we
to
just
them.
upload
and they
to
fix
them
it.
and they do it.
Mhm.
Great.
Thank you for this. I think this is a tremendous opportunity for us. What does Chief Kiernan say about it?
That's a great question. I spoke with Chief right after I saw this presentation. I sent him the video. He is already aware of this company, and his response to me was great! Exclamation point, exclamation point. This is a great company, and he knows about it. So. Mhm. Okay. Next, in my report, we were notified earlier in the school year of our National Merit Scholarship Program. So for those that don't know what the National Merit Scholarship Program is, it is students get entered into that program by taking the PSAT or the preliminary SAT, which is also called the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. So the timing for this, so for example, for the students that took the PSAT in 2021, the qualifying test for entry into the competition was 2023. For our students that take it this year as juniors in 2022. I'm sorry, who took it in 2022 in the spring, will be entered for competition for scholarships in 2024. So about 1.5 million students across the country take the PSAT and MSQT. And about they usually level it that there are 50,000 students that they consider to be the high scorers. Of that, they break that into 2 groups. So 2/3 of the high scorers are considered commended students, and 1/3 is considered semifinalists. So if you are a commended students, you get entered into the potential for special scholarships sponsored by corporations and businesses. If you are a semifinalist, you can apply for the National Merit Scholarship, and you have to meet some other criteria, including certain grades and a letter of recommendation from your school principal and some other criteria. It's really, I'm very happy to announce that we had 2 students this year that qualified for National Merit Commended Students, and that is Stephen Bartel and Sophia Nunez. Congratulations to both of them. It is awesome. Along those lines, when we're celebrating students, we had 4 students, 1 in each grade at the high school, who were named Student of the Month for grade 12. It was Dylan Torriello. In grade 11, Charlie Fejdal, and I apologize if I just did not pronounce that properly. Grade 10 was Ella Barchi, and grade 9, Leah. It says Barchi, but I can get that name. And I'll come back to that. HBW is having a really exciting opportunity on November 15th. We are having Sayatani Dasgupta, who is both a medical doctor and has her master's in public health from Johns Hopkins. She also is a celebrated author. She has been published widely in academic and literary outlets and journals, including the Journal of American Medical Association, The Lancet, and Ms. Magazine, among others. She's also co-authored a book on Bengali folktales and a memoir about her education at Johns Hopkins. She also began writing middle grade level textbooks, and she has came out with The Serpent's Secret, which is a series on Karanamala and the Kingdom Beyond. And there are 3 books in that series. That one, The Serpent's Secret, Game of Stars, and the last one that was published in 2020, The Chaos Curse. She will be with us at HBW on November 15th, talking to our 5th and 6th grade students.
Will the students have an opportunity to read those books, or they're going to be discussed?
Yes, they're going to be discussed. And I think there's a good number of our students have already read them, and
Great.
they'll have a chance to ask
That's
questions. And that's my report for tonight. And I'll check on that name because I clearly have downloaded the same name twice, but I'll do that while we're going on.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Giuseppe?
If I'm correct, that author visit was organized, and I think she's done this a few years now, organized by Mrs. Kleineck, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Next on our agenda is our business administrator report.
Good evening, everyone. So for the business administrator report, I have some minor updates in finance. For tonight's agenda, we have the August 2022 board secretary, treasurer, and the budget transfer reports. They're all in agreement. Earlier this month, our auditors, Nisavacher, completed the 2021-2022 fiscal audit. They will be presenting at our December meeting. I look forward to that report as we continue strengthening our fiscal position. I'm also happy to report that we finally received delivery of our 54-passenger gas engine school bus. It was delivered last week. It was actually used immediately for an athletic event that day. This bus actually replaces 14-year-old diesel engine bus, so it actually rides quieter, better for our environment, and as diesel is actually now being phased out, and most likely will no longer be used in the state of New Jersey going forward. So the one thing that I also want to know is that the new buses, the large buses, are predominantly used for athletics and for our field trips throughout the district. Lastly, as we approach the end of the calendar year, we begin to prepare for our 2023-2024 school year budget preparations. Resolution number 14 is the tentative budget calendar. This calendar is used to guide our budget development timeline for our fiscal planning. I'm looking forward to build my second Verona budget alongside our superintendent to support the goals and vision for the 2023-24 school year. This concludes my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Does anybody have any questions? If no, we're going to move on to committee reports. We had facilities, buildings, and grounds.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yes. student report, and we'll get Mrs. Slabursky to add that heading to the
Oh,
to
okay.
the
'Cause
agenda.
I was gonna
That's,
say, did
yeah,
I
no,
not see it
no,
again?
no, you didn't. It's not there. So we'll go on to our student representatives report.
Okay, so there we go. So this past 2 weeks, I've been like focused trying to establish communication between students, between different schools, and because I really want this to be a two-way role. I bring you guys information about the schools, and I bring them information about what's happening here. So I met with Superintendent DG Zeppi and President Freshke to just go over expectations for what I'm doing here, what you guys want from me, and how I can help students. Shortly after that, started getting in touch with and connecting with the elementary and middle schools, reaching out to principals, asking them about any student leadership groups, teachers, guidance counselors I can get in touch with to really go over what students are thinking and feeling, even at the younger level where like the teachers and guidance counselors might have a better sense than the students themselves getting that information. And I'm working on scheduling a meeting with the middle school student council, which recently just had their election. So that'll be in the near future. And I published a short summary of the last meeting on the school newspaper's website. As time passes, going to think of ways to promote that, whether that be on the grade level classrooms, social media, just explore those options in the future too. And middle and high school, like I said, they just wrapped up the student council elections at the high school, especially posters, speeches. We haven't had an election like this in a minute, so that was fun. And in terms of in-school college visits at the high school, that's a new program this year. We've been like about once a day almost. We've been having schools come in, speak to students, representatives from the schools, gives kids a chance to ask questions face to face, have someone who knows their college without the need and hassle of going potentially out of state, out of town to look at these colleges. Been seeing a wide variety. Next week, 2 weeks from now, I believe, is the community college for Morris County. Next week, the Savannah College of Art and Design, public and private colleges. So there's a variety of options being presented to students as we try and implement more like a broader view of possible paths after high school and greater access to vocational training in the high school. And Breast Cancer Awareness Month, tons of fundraising at sports events, at athletics, the volleyball Dig Pink, Cheer for a Cure, the Minnettes Angels football game, in addition to the Student Council's Pink Day fundraising. Next week, Spirit Week at the high school, kicking off on Halloween. It should be fun, little themes for each day, student participation. And yeah, first ever fall cabaret at the high school last night, student performances. I wasn't able to attend, but from what I heard, they did a great job. Theme was villainous, very in season, very Halloweeny. And cross country, Ian Zalewski, county champion for Essex County, and Liam McEnerney won the freshman race. So congratulations to them. Boys and girls teams are going to sectionals this Saturday, I believe. And that's the last from me, if there's any question.
Thank
Reese, way to instantly add tremendous value
I was just gonna
to our
say,
board.
Right.
You rock. That was awesome.
You rock. You did.
So what I was going to ask, can your report that you just gave publicly, can that be shared with the BA and then become part of our official meeting minutes?
Yeah, that
So
would
we
be
have
great.
that verbatim. That's
Of course,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put that, yeah, in the future, I can like type out like a quick outline and send that ahead before meetings.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't have
even
to be
if-
before, but
Oh,
just so
yeah.
he has it for the minutes.
Even out, yeah, so he
Yeah.
has it for the official minutes. And I do want to thank you because you did take time out of your day to sit with administrators and sit with myself. And, you know, we're just really, again, happy to have you here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Last thing I skipped over, I don't know how I missed this. The band was overall grand champions at the West Orange Invitational, October 16th. That happened too.
Grand champions.
Yes.
Excellent.
And before you go on to committee reports, just want to correct that name. So grade 12, Dylan Toriello, grade 11, Charles Fejal, grade 10, Ella Barchi, and grade 9, Leah Bakken, B-A-C-H-A-N, Bakken, I think. Thank you.
And congratulations to all those students. is the student of the month, because we started that a while ago, I think pre-pandemic, and it kind of got paused. And how are they selected? How is that process
You know what?
working?
I will report back. I will get that criteria from Mr. Cogdill and get back to the
Yeah.
board.
Thank you. Okay, so now we will go on to committee reports. So we do have facilities, buildings and grounds that met.
Yes, we met. It was a hard act to follow, Reese. So my reports are usually a lot drier. Let's see. Our school bus arrived. Yay. Thank you for reporting out on that, Mr. Cruz. We completed the architect interviews. Thank you, Ms. Fresky, for representing the board on that. And that is resolution. It's at the back here. It's resolution number 13 tonight. I was asked to say that the softball foul ball net is still on the radar. We haven't given up on it yet. We are trying to explore other options with that. The preliminary walkthroughs with the principals were completed in advance to CUSAC. We have a second meeting in November, and a lot of what was found was already remediated and finalized. Fire inspections per annual requirement were done. The list of abatements and inspections were given, and most of it was already taken care of within the next few days. Tonight, we also have resolution. A lot of these are facilities resolutions. Resolution number 12, the sale of our small bus to Holcomb Transportation. And we're still in, Mr. Cruz is still in conversations now about what to do with the old large bus. And Alpha did finish their reports. So the ones who are doing the complete audit of our facilities. And Mr. Naturelli is going to sit down with them and do a page by page overview of that report. And he will hopefully in November have a chance to report out on that in full. And then we will be posting that to the website for public viewing. And I mean, everything else is old business carried over from the last agenda, specifically the forest retaining wall. They have been out to start initial work on that, but the work has not begun in earnest yet. And that was really the only sort of outstanding thing that had any updates to it for now. Any questions? Questions?
Real
Yes.
quick, just because I'm not familiar with it yet. CUSAC, what's that? Real quick, just definition there.
It stands for, because the Department of Education loves acronyms, Quality Single Accountability Continuum. It's how we get monitored by the state, and school districts have to be monitored once in a 4-year period. So every 3 years, they will come out, and there are 5 areas that they monitor: instruction and program, finances, operations, personnel, and what's the last one? No, that's instruction and program. Governance, thank you. And governance. And there's something called a district performance review, where we have to go in and rate ourselves that we're meeting all of these criteria. For each of those 5 larger areas have criteria underneath them. And then we submit our district performance review, and then the state comes out and they do an on-site monitoring to see whether they give us the same points we give ourselves. And if you earn less than 80% in any category, you have to do an action plan for either that particular category or the whole CUSAC monitoring. We are in cohort 2, so we actually get monitored next year, but we are doing a dry run through the CUSAC process this year, just to make sure that we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
If there's no other questions regarding facilities report, we're going to move on to finance.
Yeah, so we had a meeting last week, and Reese, you were obviously very prepared for your report, but I'm going to do the opposite, and you shouldn't do what I do. I'm going to ask our BA to highlight some of the important parts of that meeting that he prepared.
I have it. So one of the things and I'm actually going to skip because I actually covered a few of them in the BA report. It was this, and we covered actually overlap with buildings and grounds, which is the sale of the bus. And that sale of the bus, it actually went on a public bid. The highest bid we received, which is actually what we're approving tonight, is the sale of that bus for $8,008. And that's for the small bus that we actually received over the summer. We received a new bus, so this small bus that's actually, but I believe is actually now 15 years old. So we wouldn't be able to use it as an extension, but that's it. It kind of like it reached this life cycle. So the other piece was the update on the big bus, which we kind of like spoke about as well. The audit, which I shared earlier. So a lot of that, and then the calendar. The one thing that we did have on the committee was a correction to Chapter 44 benefits. So we did have an error that was caught in through via the audit process, where a little less than a dozen staff members that opted to move from the old Chapter 78 plan. They moved to Chapter 44 early on in January 2021. At the time, the administration interpreted the VEA contract to freeze and provide a frozen rate. And in this case, it was like a frozen salary. So they misinterpreted the contract, and the incorrect amount was actually being collected from these 11 individuals. So that was something that we had to correct. We met with the VEA leadership to discuss a plan. So the correction was applied. The correct amount is being collected now for the employee contribution. And right now, as far as the payback period, we're spreading it out in 36 pays, because it's a substantial amount. And also we understand that it could be a hardship, especially when they're already contributing their employee contribution and then also back paying from a year ago. So that's the update on that piece.
Excellent report, Jorge.
Thank
you. That was a good pass there, Mr. Walker. Are there any other questions regarding finance? Nope. If not, we are going to continue with the agenda. And at this point, we invite the public up for public comments on agenda action items. So anything that's being voted upon in the resolutions. And if you could help us out by naming the resolution as well, please state your name and where you're from. And
Christian Strumolo, 153 Morningside Road. I'm not here for this reason, but I'm looking through the agenda and I see resolution 11 and 13. These are considered professional appointments, correct?
The architect
And the attorney? Why are these appointments being done in November and December? Normally, appointments for professional services are done in January during the reorg. You have one board member who's not running for re-election. You have another board member who's running. You may have a whole different layout of board members here that may want to go in a different direction than reappointing them prior to an election, which is 1 week away.
We just did a request for proposal. So this was part of an RFP process that's been going on since the summer.
And you don't do that in January? Normally, like in January. So now,
That's what
let's
we
say you
reorg,
get
yes.
new board members, they stay on as holdovers. You put out the RFP or the RFQ in January. The board attorney and the architect are still here, still working for the town, the Board of Ed. And then, because you may have new members here that want to take a different direction. I think it's a little premature to do appointments. And it says here that, and I'm glad you're here, that you made the recommendation. Did any?
Well, I make the recommendation on every
on
resolution.
all professional services?
On everything on the agenda. If you read it, it's
Okay.
always upon the
Yeah.
recommendation of the superintendent.
And this was done this way last year as well? In November and December?
I don't know when, I've been here since July, so I'm not
Yeah,
going to
that's what I'm
speak to a
saying.
prior.
'Cause I mean, in my opinion, I've never seen professional services done in November and
Well,
December.
we always, every board in the
Mhm.
state of New Jersey will approve during the reorg, they approve all professional services again, so you'll always see it in January.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean when the initial approval is done in January. They get,
So you'll vote currently now on these appointments and then re-vote in January?
they go back on for the reorg.
But that's
agenda.
after you already took their proposals and so forth. It's just a normal vote. It's not, let's do it over and send out another RFP,
Right,
another
but please
RFQ.
remember
Yeah.
that every year, there are going to be potentially new board members in January.
That's fine.
right?
And these are
So
year appointments by state law, correct? Well, at least the attorney is a year appointment by state law.
Yes, well,
Yeah.
it depends on the contract that you draw with them, but
No, I thought all like BOEs and municipalities are 1 year contract for attorneys. That's law.
I will look into that.
Oh, I
That's
know
not-
that
yeah.
for, all right, thank you. But
Okay.
yeah, that has to be
So
done on a yearly
This
basis.
started.
Whether you reappoint them, you don't have to actually put it out for RFP or RFQ. You could just reappoint them, but it's a yearly appointment.
So then the board members that come on, if they're not happy, they can reappoint.
But how? Isn't this a year appointment?
Next year.
So they have to wait. So if new board members are sworn in January, my question is, then they would have to wait a full year.
Right, but
I'm
lame
sorry.
duck is from November, from the election to January. We are not in lame duck session right now.
But that's what I'm saying. I almost feel like it's being done prior
It's not.
to, okay.
If I could jump in too.
Yeah,
I-
thank you.
I definitely see the point you're trying to make.
Yes,
My experience is once these bids go out.
Yeah.
There's people that previously provided the service, they know the bid's going out. And
Okay.
that the organization's most likely in a position to make a change.
Yeah.
If we could make a change now instead of having maybe a lame duck 2 months between now and, when we appoint in January, I think we're going to get a better service starting now than having to wait 2 months where we might get a subpar service because the person knows that their contract's not being renewed. I was on the committee that sat for the legal, the lawyer appointment, and I gave my input certainly about the architect. I think we hit 2 home runs with these 2 particular, the architect firm and the legal firm.
okay.
Is
Is this the current firms now? They're just reappointing them?
We're gonna have to vote yes tonight. They're not us. They're not ours until the board.
No,
hopefully
but they're
tonight votes
currently
yes.
serving for the Board of Education.
They're
There's
not.
So they're 2 new
They're
firms.
2 new
Yes.
firms.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
but I definitely see your point, and
Yeah, I just wanted to make
your
sure,
point is
yeah.
sensible.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on resolutions? Nope, seeing that there is none. I need a motion. Oh, we're not going there yet. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Are there any discussion items for old or new business? What I would like to just bring up for the public is we've all just come back. The reason we moved from Tuesday night, our regular Tuesday to Thursday, is it was New Jersey School Board Association workshop this week. And we were really fortunate to have Mr. Waka attended on behalf of his school district, Haledon, but was still there being part of the learning and training sessions. He actually delivered content for one of the sessions.
Have you guys came? Oh my God, it's so sad.
It was after a late night. And Mrs. Drappi, Mrs. Prisco, myself, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Natural, Ms. Di Giuseppe. So it was really great to have new leadership across our district and for everybody to participate in. It was training sessions, professional development sessions, looking and meeting with vendors, seeing what's out there. There were a lot of student performances. They were doing the STEM, which is like a steam tank, like a Shark Tank pitch. So to see kids from all over the state doing these amazing things and be in rooms of board members and educators and administrators. So I think it was a really good experience for all of us. And I think it's a really great time. We all took copious notes. We divided and conquered. We went to different training sessions on everything from, Robert's Rules of Orders and how to run board meetings more effectively, to changing school culture, to business administrative and facilities planning. So I think we came back with a lot of information and looking forward. And like Mr. Strumolo said, we're going to have the potential of having every election cycle, you do have a new board. no matter what. There's always a seat up and that potential is there. So I think it's a really nice time to come in with a lot of training, a lot of new voices, a lot of new perspective, and really regroup and look at where we want to go in the district. So I think it's an exciting time. Does anybody else have any new or old business they want to discuss?
I mean, I think this is a great opportunity for us to sort of report out right now our bigger takeaways from the 3 days, besides the sheer exhaustion that came from like sort of reliving like a college class schedule. I think for me, the Roberts Rules class, which was my first class ever attending at the workshop. First of all, I'm really happy to finally be able to do this. Been on the board 3 years, and this is the first workshop that's been offered to me. And I regret not being able to do it. First of all, January, right away, when you first get on the board, it would be invaluable, but I understand why they do it in October. Maybe I don't know. Anyway. So the Roberts Rules class, I think was probably the most enlightening for me, because it's sort of my biggest takeaway from that class was that the way that we run our board meeting is really loosey-goosey, and it shouldn't be. We really need to lock in the fact that, our board president is our representative, or whoever is board president come reorg is the representative of the board. And they are the ones who are fielding any of the comments or questions from the public. They're also the ones who will respond or delegate that response to other board members. And that's something we've sort of gotten away from as well. So, for example, that if there is a question and somebody would like to answer it who's not the board president, they have to ask for permission, essentially. And then the board president has to give a formal approval. Not that they would ever be like, no, you can't answer that, but you know what I mean? They would have to give a formal approval. And it sort of sounds a little antiquated when you first hear them explain it, but it makes a lot of sense when it comes to keeping things very orderly and very consistent across all board meetings. I gained a lot of knowledge in the idea of tabling a motion and calling to question and tabling indefinitely and all the language that I was never like 100% comfortable with, because all the training that I've ever had has always been virtual. And it's everything that I've known, but now there's like specific language to it. So I really appreciated that. And then the other one that I went to that I really enjoyed was the strategic planning one, given by the NJSBA. And that was really invaluable in terms of timelines and services offered and sort of look-fors and how to organize and, what are best practices in terms of engaging the public and making sure that all stakeholders are represented. And I'm really looking forward to starting that work as soon as possible, hopefully. Oh, and part of that too was also talking about mission statements, revising mission statements. How do mission statements sort of drive the overall work of the strategic plan, which also carried over into the last class that I went to, which was titled Empathy, Equity, and Policy. And that for me was really the sort of training that I've been looking for since I came on the board. And it's how to, essentially the whole class was looking at policies, like policy examples, and how do we revise our policies through the lens of asking the question, what does this look like for insert student group? And that's really looking at all student groups at all levels and really dissecting on how our policies impact them independently. And that takes a tremendous amount of work. But if we're truly going to have equitable policies, that's essentially the work that has to be done. which sort of brings me to the idea of, and this is something that we have talked about over and over again, this idea of having an ad hoc committee, at least until reorg, to start revising our policies. After this class, and we look at policy all the time. Every decision that we make, we go back and we say, well, what's the policy? What's the policy? And at that point, we go, that policy really needs to be updated. It hasn't been updated in a really long time. And then, when the public brings us policies that are not equitable or are outdated, that's an excellent opportunity for us as well. But I think we did the policy wellness check, which identified, I believe it was 9 policies that they either couldn't find or were not updated well enough. And that we did work on immediately. But I would like to see us have a policy committee that is dedicated to literally going through every single policy through the lens of what does this look like for, how is this affecting our students directly? That's a tremendous amount of work, but it's the lifeblood of our district. It's what guides everything that we do. And that push now for that really comes from that class that I took. The last 2 other classes that I wanted to report out on were addressing mental health, which, to be fully honest, was not as enlightening as I hoped it was. The suggestions that they gave were just not financially feasible for, I would say, most of the districts sitting in that room. One of them was like having a Zen den in an extra classroom, which sounds amazing, but I don't know any school district that has an extra classroom right now. I don't. And if they do, that's great. But maybe there's grant funding for that down the line if we do identify. And we also have our sensory rooms in, I think, 3 of our buildings right now that all students can access, which isn't necessarily a Zen den, but is something similar. And they were talking about therapy dogs, which many of you know me, that's my jam. Animals, that would be great. But these are just ideas that are sort of far reaching, but maybe we can sort of keep on the back burner and keep those in mind if we find any extra funding coming out of our budget. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And the last one that I really enjoyed was changing the board culture. So I really got a lot out of this. And my biggest takeaway from this was in-house training from the get. And I don't know that as a board, we've done a very good job of this. And I think this is something that we need to work on right away in sort of developing a training program for onboarding for any new board members, as we have new ones coming in January. This is a great opportunity for us to sort of get started on what that looks like now. That way, when new board members come on in January, we're ready to roll. And that onboarding is done in a consistent way every year, or at least improved upon every year as we find gaps and holes and stuff like that. Those were my biggest takeaways from this week. It was, and besides being utterly exhausted, it was a lot of learning. It was a lot.
Does anybody else have anything to piggyback on that?
My biggest takeaway from, Sarah and I attended, Mrs. Drappy and I attended most of the sessions together. So you reported a lot of the information, but my biggest takeaway was that I definitely cannot go on to Jeopardy because I'm not a good Jeopardy player. But no, it was a very, it was long days, a lot of information, but a lot of information that is basically, if you have common sense, it's a lot of repetitive information, if you know what I'm saying. So a lot of the classes were a lot of same information, and just if you have some common sense, you should do fine as a board member. So it was a good few days. But Mr. Walker, I am sorry that I did not make it. I
Pam, I videotaped it, so I'll send it to you.
a little late on Tuesday
And you
night.
can watch it. You can watch it every night.
We should all have access to it because we all attended.
Yes,
So I think.
But I
No
am,
worries.
if it was on Tuesday, I would have definitely been there, or if it was Wednesday morning.
Pam, there were no open seats, so you'd have to get there early. So it's all good, but thank you.
So funny. So just to go back, Mrs. Drappi, to creating an ad hoc committee for policy. So this is something that we've spoken about. So if this is something that the board wants to do, I believe we can form that now to cover the time period from our next meeting through our reorg meeting. So is the, just by a verbal, are we in favor of that, or?
We could do it tonight if you want, but we might want to call the new law firm because I think we might have to have an official resolution to make a new committee. I don't think we could just do that.
I think the ad hoc one you can do because it's a limited time. So I can put an email out tomorrow. I mean, we still have our current board attorney who can answer a simple question like that. And we could go from there.
When's the new attorney? I'd like to hear that from the
it's-
new attorney because that's the one we all wanted. So I want to hear that opinion.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was, so in reviewing our policy on committees, there really is nothing concrete about it. But I was under the impression that the president's prerogative could just be, we're making this committee and here are the people that I want to do it or not.
I have the wording right there.
Okay.
It says an ad hoc committee may be created and charged at any time by the president or a majority of the board members present and voting. The president shall appoint members to any committee so created and charged. Members shall serve until the committee is discharged.
So
I just make a resolution to make a committee or now even and
Yeah.
vote on it.
So let's do the ad hoc committee and who wants to be on it? I'm assuming Mrs. Drappi.
Yep.
Are there any other takers that want to be on that? Then I will do it with you.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to add an ad hoc.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just, when I learn something and I feel like I'm ready to apply it, I don't know, maybe it's the teacher in me.
Okay,
the
so
learner
then,
in me. Thank you.
We'll call it policy committee, and we'll do an ad hoc to reevaluate and reorganize that in January. So it'll be
Right.
from now until our January reorg meeting.
So
And
then in
at
the
that
January
time-
rework meeting, we would need that as a resolution to
Yeah,
make that. a
and then we'll
permanent
check with
committee.
the new attorney coming in on with a formal
Well, in
procedure.
January, the board president will decide because if they want to keep it or change it or make any amendments.
Well, if we're
Yeah, I
doing the
think
ad
we-
hoc committee ending
Then it
in,
ends
ending at
official.
the last day is the day
December
before
30th.
reorg. And then at the reorg meeting, we can have a resolution to make that a permanent committee. That way we don't need an
If the
ending.
board president chooses to do that.
Oh, right. Well,
Yeah.
she makes the
Right.
agenda, right?
Right. Or whoever the board
Whoever it is.
president is
Right.
at that point.
Right.
But because our policy is not clear about whether we need a resolution to do that or whether that's up to the board president, I'll check with our attorney and come back with that.
So the other business I would be remiss if I didn't say is Resolution 2.4 is the resignation of or retirement of Gina Venezia, who's the supervisor of special services. So I do want to thank her for her many, many years of dedicated, enthusiastic, compassionate, and graceful service to the district. I had the good fortune when I was a paraprofessional, I worked up here at the high school and I worked directly with Miss Venezia for a lot of years. And it's amazing. The work that she does and did for our students was incredible. So she will definitely be missed. And I do wish her luck in her next venture. And then lastly, I just want to report out, I got an email flyer, and this is something that's available to students throughout Essex County in grades 6 through 12, and it's the Essex Off-Road Biking Team. And they are part of the NICA, which is the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. And they are having on this Saturday, October 29th, a try it out day. So between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. in the Cedar Grove Community Park, you can go there. They will have bicycles and they're going to be talking about what their club does. And then Wednesday on November 9th, there's a formal information center from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the Verona community center in the ballroom. So if there's any students in grades 6 through 12 that think off-road cycling. Oh, okay, great. We can put that in the Friday folder.
That in the Friday folder.
But I thought that was like a really good thing. It's co-ed, it's people of all abilities, and I think it's a good opportunity for students. The more, the better.
Can we, the request we'd gotten from the Child Special Services parent organization, if we could include some of that language in your Friday, your report to the community, I think that'd be awesome.
I wanted to add one more thing that I forgot to report out on about the workshop. And it's only because I was only able to stay for 30 minutes because I had to go to another one. They overlapped. It was really annoying. It was titled The Power of Student-Led Equity Groups. And it was this really interesting organization that it was like a human resources director for the town who actually partnered with the school district to pull in student equity groups, and they partnered with the school district and the township. And it was this really amazing trifecta in looking at sort of like creativity and problem solving at the student level. And, I think our student voices are incredibly valuable, and they have teachers who right now volunteer for it. But I asked the question, like, you plan on giving stipends? And it's actually coming through a council budget because the organization is council directed. But I just thought this was really interesting. There's a chair from the council, and then there's a liaison from the council. They bring in religious leaders, other community members, and then of course the student representatives who are part of these student equity groups. I think this is maybe an opportunity for us. And I don't know, maybe Reese, this is something that you can maybe bring back to the student councils and just sort of explore like what that would look like in our school district.
There we go. I'm still getting used to the mics. Yeah, for sure. I'll bring that back to the student council. I think also GLI, Girls Learn International. It's a fundraising activism. They're actually sending a student to the United Nations as a delegate at the Women's Rights Convention, something. I forget, but it's very cool. I'll have more information on that next meeting. And Black and Verona student-led club as well at VHS. So I'll bring it back to those guys, tell them about this opportunity.
I know you were talking about like reaching down to the other schools as well. This particular program was a 7th grade through 12th grade program, and they actually ended up pulling in some of the local universities and colleges, community colleges around them too. So the high schoolers sort of had young adult mentors in the program, and it's just I regret I had to leave. I mean, it was literally half hour to half hour to half hour. So unfortunately, I would like to find more about it. So
yeah, you said that you guys have links to those, right? Access to those programs. Yeah, if you could send that to me, I'd be very interested in looking at that presentation.
Any other discussion items? We're going to close that out, and we're going to move on to a roll call to vote on the resolutions. And I need a motion to approve resolutions number 1 through 18.
can I just ask that we, wow. Did you say so moved?
I said motion. I can't say so moved.
Okay. You said motion. Sorry, that was unexpected. Never done that before. I was hoping that we could split the agenda up when we move the agenda into the different categories. So move them by category instead of moving the whole agenda at once.
This is, I will share with the whole board a format of the agenda that might be, it's different than what we've been using here.
Okay.
But I'll share it with the board and you can take a look at it. It's a format that I've used for 10 years.
Okay.
It's very clear and it breaks it out into areas, and they move them
Great.
all at one, like items from 1 to 12 under personnel,
Right.
items 1 to 7 under education.
Yeah, I looked at your, before you worked here, I looked at a lot of your agendas, and Kendall, and I thought it was very intelligent the way you designed those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so for tonight, we're gonna keep it as a whole, and then we'll go down to we'll move on to the breakdown.
That requires a policy change, by the way, to change our agenda.
Right. Okay. Assignment number 1. So, Mr. Walker, was that a motion to,
You said you needed a motion, so I
I
said
need a motion to accept those resolutions 1 through 18?
Yeah.
So moved by Mr. Walker. And I need a second by Mrs. Prisco. Is there any discussion? Seeing that there is no discussion, I'm going to ask Mr. Cruz to please do the roll call.
Mr. Walker,
I vote yes.
for the record, Mr. Day is absent. Mrs. Drappi,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes.
Mrs. Freshy.
Yes.
We have quorum. Motion passed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And then lastly, at this point, we can invite the public up for public comments. And please, again, state your name, where you're from, and there's a 3-minute time limit. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Sergio. Yes, this is not, my 8th grade class is a lot easier to speak to. I'm sorry. This is nerve-wracking. But I'm addressing you tonight, obviously, not only as an educator, but as a concerned resident of Verona. A fellow resident of a former educator, Columbia Grombowski, brought to my attention a letter submitted to the editor of myveronanewjersey.com, expressing her concerns on a current Board of Education member, excuse me, not current member, candidate, Mrs. Denise Verzella. Ms. Grabowski's concerns were recently posted on that site via a letter, and I would like to address them here in a public forum. Screenshots of various tweets on Ms. Verzella's social media have circulated throughout the township of Verona. In short, Ms. Verzella's tweets are offensive, politically charged hate speech, and riddled with racist undertones. I am appalled that a candidate who expresses this type, of behavior is not only running for the school board, but has the endorsements of current sitting members. I would think if a superintendent or any district employee expressed these views, their jobs would most likely be in jeopardy, which is why I find it puzzling that a candidate running for a board seat with the same views has the support of current board members and is even considered for the position of Board of Education in the Verona Township Public Schools. Excuse me. I just feel that her political emotions are going to dictate serious judgment decisions that will obviously further down the road impact the children of Verona. As an educator, like I said, for over 25 years, I strongly stand by this statement. I do not believe she will be an appropriate fit for the Verona Board of Education. I sincerely thank you for this time and have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments from the public? And please lead off with your name and address, please.
Hey, I'm Mike Dupree, 47 Cypress Avenue. Hi, everyone. I wasn't going to say anything, but I just want to say I think a policy review committee is a really good idea. My question on that would be if there are any proposed changes to policy, like what is the method that those would be, I guess, reviewed and discussed in public and voted on? Would it all assumingly happen in a forum like this? Either way, I think it's a great idea. It's obviously a lot of us have read through them and there are a lot that are quite old. So.
Yeah, and sometimes the age, what we would do in a case like that, if nothing has changed underneath the policy, we would put it out for review, would not necessarily change, but then you mark on the date that you reviewed it on October 27th, 2022. So we know that we've gone back and looked at it, but the policy process in the state of New Jersey is a 2-reading process. So any changes would go up for first reading. They are available in the public folder. I'm working on making them available just on our public website as well. In both places, so you can go either place to see them. And they will have a colored strike through. So anything that's being removed will be struck through. Anything that's added is in a different color, either red or blue, depending on whether you're using a Mac or a PC to do your track changes. And so you'll see what the policy used to read, what has been stricken, and what verbiage has been added at the that's after month 1. After month 2, anybody you can suggest as a member of the public a change if you'd like. Any of the staff or students in the district can suggest changes. Anyone in the board can suggest a change, or I can suggest a change. And then those changes get discussed after a second reading. Second reading is second reading and adoption. The board votes to either adopt, and it needs to have at least 3 affirmative votes for the policy to be adopted as changed. So it's pretty transparent. People can see what's being discussed. We do also have a policy service that are policy attorneys. They're called Strauss Esme. They do about 85% of the schools across the state, school districts across the state. So they guide us. So for instance, I'm working with language on a policy that I wanted to get their input. So they're working with me to do a specific policy for Verona in an area that we need some guidance. So there's several different ways we get policies done.
That's very educational. Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate that. Also, great job.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, none seen. Thank you. Going to officially close the portion for public comments. And our next, is that it? Oh my God. I always get nervous when we're ending. So the next public meeting is Tuesday, November 8th, and that is Election Day. So I do want to, again, thank all the candidates. I've said it before, it's not easy to put yourself out there. You're vulnerable and you're an open book for a couple of weeks. But it is always exciting because with each election cycle, like I said earlier, we do have new voices, new perspective, and it's always a new board. And with new administration, to repeat myself, I think it's a really exciting time to bring in all of the newness and kick off the next year reorg in whichever direction we're going to go. So I do want to thank all the candidates. So Tuesday, November 8th is our next public meeting. Confidential session is at 6 p.m. with our public session here in the Verona High School Learning Commons at 7 p.m. And we are officially going to adjourn the meeting. It is 8:20 and I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Drappi. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Mr. Walk, I always need an audible.
Aye.
Thank you.